we'll now see how we can add a new page to our web. We've previously made a basic web application, NetCore, of course, whereby we type in this URL, or it appeared automatically when we ran it, and that took us to the home page, which had welcome written on it. But this time we're going to add another page. Well, there it is, new page. The two pages. What's that? One of these is like an XML, and the other one is a code behind, which we'll talk about. But they do come in pairs. You can see the index that we have been playing with comes in two parts, and so does the error, which we haven't looked at yet at all, but we did briefly mention the privacy. But this is the new page that we are going to add. Now, how do we access it? Well, it's called new page, so if we add a segment onto the URL and type new page and press enter, then you can see that the new page will appear. But if I get rid of that, and well, I could type index, would take me back to the home page as well, but I'm going to show you another way of, notice that doesn't really much about the capitalization when we type into the URL, but I'm going to show you also how we can put this tag here, which we can press, and that's another way of getting our new page. So let's see how we go about doing that. Well, it's not much trouble to make a new web, and so that's what I'll do. I'll get a new project, and then I'll choose the web core as well, and we'll go on to next, and we'll make our we'll call it Razor Test, and I'll place it in this folder where it's easily accessible for me, and then create that. And I'm going to use a web application and create that. So in my Solution Explorer, I can right click. Now make sure we right click there, because that's where the page is going to be added, and I can add a Razor page. Well, when it says Razor page, the simple Razor page that we want, which is just a new page. So we're going to call it new page. Not very original, but okay, so we can add that new Razor page. Now we should find that we've got two files that are being produced, and indeed if we look inside the folder we can see our two files here. This one with the plain CS HTML is what we call a view, really, and this one is the code behind that view. Let's take a look at the code behind. There's nothing much going on at the moment, but it's the CS HTML that we're interested in at the moment. And basically, as I explained before, this is a Razor page. It consists of C# code along with HTML, and all it does is put the new page in heading 1. Okay, so we can simply looks like we can just run that now and just see. Well, when we run, we've got to go through this to go through the security, and so that starts off with our index page, and as you know, it won't matter if there is an index on there, it's just still the same page, but we're looking for our new page, so hopefully if we type that in, then we should be able to find, not the correct spelling, we should be able to find our new page appearing, which it does. Let's take a look at these two Razor pages, new page and the one with the .cs on the end. What I might like to do is take a look at them side by side with a bit of luck, and I can just maneuver those around. So to remind you what's what, this is really the layout, like it's the old HTML file, if you like, which is rendered to our web page, which we're showing here. And now this one is the code behind, so it's related to that. Of course, they got the same name, which is new page CS_HTML, but this has got the .cs indicated that it is a C# code file. Okay, so can these two files talk to each other, liaise behind the scenes, so to speak? Well, let's take a look. I'm going to add a property here, which we may be able to use. It's the ID property, which we may be able to use. Now that's giving green squigglies because the code is still running, so it doesn't matter for the moment. Now what I'm going to do is to try and communicate with that over here. So what I'm going to do is to qualify this with an attribute. And I'm going to qualify it with this bind property attribute, which really is telling it to communicate behind the scenes with the CS HTML file. These green lights, the green squigglies, I'll get rid of those by stopping our program. And also I need to add here the corresponding property, which I'll do like this. So I can. Now that should be communicating with this ID behind the scenes from there to there. Now this model is interesting because it's really, shall we say, it's a variable which this is indicating where the variable is, the property I should say. And look at this, it says model razor test pages and then new page model. Well, indeed that is that class over here. So it's referring to that class, and within that class, so you can see this is a pseudonym, if you like, for that. So it means that ID is referring to this ID over here, which is a property of that particular class, new page model. So take a good look at that. We come across that quite often. I think we can just use a small m there if we wanted to as well, but it seems that it's usual to use a capital M. And don't forget to qualify it with the @ sign, meaning that it's a C# reference. Just going back a bit, when we created our Razor page, you remember that we called it new page. Well, see how when the code behind is actually tacked on this model, and this will happen all the time. It's what we call a page model. Page model is a way of a way of communicating one to the other, which is inherited from page model, which stipulates that we've got to use this on get here, which is what interfaces do. They specify you must include such a thing. Now this on get really deals with HTTP. In other words, when you type the URL into the website, then this is how it comes back. If from the request comes back as a response. Now, so that's the way we're basically communicating. Now, how do we get that ID into the page model? Let's find out. Before we do that, one thing I forgot to do, we need to qualify my bind property with this, which is telling it that that on get is the one to be used. Supports get equals true, because we can have an on post in here, which I'll explain a bit later, an on post instead of an on get, but and that will take preference. So we have to qualify it, and for some reason they tell me that you have to say supports get equals true, otherwise it'll deal with the post. So that will enable us to deal with a get. And don't forget, a get is something which is comes via the URL. So I'll make sure I run that, and then I can take a look at the browser. So what we can do is to qualify that with some number for experimental purposes, and then if we were to run that, you'll see that the 10 will appear here. So what's actually happened is that that ID has been passed through the on get, and because of this sort of communication between here and here, it's taken the model ID to be 10 and it's simply output that. It's a bit crude HTML, I'm afraid, but it simply outputs the 10 to the rendered page just before the wording new page. And finally, as promised, I'm going to put a new tag in here between home and privacy in order to be able to click on it and run my new page without having to type in the URL. So let me stop the program, and that will close the browser. Take a look at the we're looking for our layout folder. And do you remember how the layout works? When we start up, we get this file here starting up, automatic. Well, whenever we have a rendering going on, this is called automatically. And look at the name of this. This is the name of our default. You can call it what you like. By the way, an underscore means the file itself will not be considered a Razor page and rendered as part of the URL. Like if we type the word new page, that would give the new page in the URL. But if we type that, no such thing. So that distinguishes them between renderable pages. Now let's take a look. Therefore, it's a bit tricky to find. It's in the shared folder. So we take a look at the layout folder, and we can see down here we've got this corresponds to the home and the privacy, which are these two, which were the two tags on the menus. There are these ones here, as a matter of fact, the home and the privacy. So those two correspond to here. So what I'm going to do is to put a new list in there. I'm just going to copy that up, control drag hopefully, and then I'm going to change that to, instead of going to the privacy, and saying the word privacy, it's going to say new page, and it's also going to go to that particular new page URL, so that if I now run the code and then we click on the new page link, it should show the new page. That makes it more convenient than just typing out new page in the URL. In the next video we talk about MVC, which is Model View Controller. Model View Controller is really a way of dividing up the responsibilities of those two files, just broadly speaking, into three files: one a model file, one a controller, and one a view. And we talk about that, but it's basically just a reorganization of this. That's an MVC, which we'll talk about.